Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Enabling a Secure Digital Workplace webinar. I am Sandra Jones, Head of Marketing for Fujitsu in the Caribbean and Latin America, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Before we get started, let's take care of some housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. All attendees are muted to minimize interruptions. The duration of this webinar is 1 hour with an additional 30 minutes if required to facilitate all your questions. You may ask your questions at any time during the webinar by using the Questions tab. If we don't get to your question today, we will follow up with you after the webinar to address your specific questions. We will reward 10 of our early bird registrants with a token from Fujitsu. You will be notified at the end of the webinar, and you must be present when we announce the winners. Now, please allow me to introduce our speakers. Our featured speakers today are Chanel Bovell, Solutions Architect at Fujitsu Caribbean, Ansel Mohammed, Cloud Architect at Fujitsu Caribbean, and Andrew Dixon, our VP Enterprise and Cybersecurity for Fujitsu Caribbean. So let's talk about why we're having today's webinar and why this topic. We realize that a number of our customers might be under some unprecedented pressure due to the complications caused by COVID-19. Businesses everywhere, globally, had to rapidly shift to remote workspaces and adapt to new ways of working, what we now call the new normal. But we also recognize that this new normal is not a short-term fix. It will definitely revolutionize the traditional workplace and require us to permanently transition to a digital-enabled workforce. So what is a digitally enabled workplace? At Fujitsu, we believe that a digital workplace is one that is driven by transformation and supported by intelligent services. It requires new optimized tools, applications, and services. The modern employee expects a more social, consumer-style working experience, one that empowers them to connect, collaborate, and innovate to add value in their roles, and of course, enable them to deliver a truly differentiated experience to your customers. To enable this human empowerment, organizations must deliver a truly transformed digital workplace. Your employees must have the flexibility to work from anywhere and anytime, connecting to their apps and data on whatever devices they want to use. And of course, you need to ensure they have a seamlessly consistent and unified experience across all these platforms. And last but not least, it must be secure. Today, we're going to guide you on the adoption of digital workplace technologies that can help your business transform and allow you to create a modern, multi-generational workforce. So our agenda today will cover how you can connect, communicate, and innovate with Microsoft Teams. And this will be led by Chanel. And then we will talk about how you can achieve scale and flexibility with Microsoft Azure Cloud. And this will be led by Ansel Mohammed. And then, of course, we will talk about how you can ensure that your most important assets are protected. That is building trust with all your stakeholders, your customers, and your employees. And this will be presented by Andrew Dixon. And then we will announce our early bird registration winners, and then we will have the questions. So without much further ado, let me now hand over to my colleague, Chanel. Chanel, take it away.
Thank you, Sandra. Welcome to everyone on the call. My name is Chanel, And as Sandra rightfully said, I'm part of the digital technology services team. A friend of mine also called me a Microsoft fangirl, so I'm very excited about presenting to you today. Firstly, we want to start with the world's largest work from home experiment. In the past 2 months, we've experienced something that we never thought was possible. We had to adapt very quickly to being able to work remotely. And why Microsoft Teams is being exhibited here today is because it features four major things that we need for remote work, which is chat, meet, call, and collaborate. So basically, within the last month, we've seen the use of Microsoft Teams increase from just 560 million minutes per day to over 2.7 billion minutes per day spent in meetings. Why is this? Why such a drastic change? Well, it's not only because of COVID, it's also because Microsoft Teams is very adept at certain things. So let's discuss what those are. It is seamless. So for example, if you already have Windows infrastructure and Windows servers, it could integrate seamlessly with those services. So for example, for the more technical crowd, it could integrate seamlessly with your Active Directory services. You could also use it to connect anywhere at any time. You don't have to be in the office. You could be on the beach. You could, well, not on the beach because that may be banned now, but you could be at your home. You could be at your parents. You could be babysitting. You could connect on any device anytime. Also, Microsoft Teams is more than just a chat. You could video call. You could co-author documents. You could even check in with your employees in a virtual town hall. Also, with Microsoft Teams, it allows you to connect to thousands of applications that you may already have subscriptions to. Why would we use Microsoft Teams, or when would we use Microsoft Teams? In my experience, IT professionals use Microsoft Teams for troubleshooting. So if they need to see someone's screen and they need to guide them through a process, they'll use Microsoft Teams for that. A lot of managers and team leaders would use Microsoft Teams to host virtual town halls and staff meetings. For me personally, I would have used Microsoft Teams if I'm working on a presentation. I'll co-edit a presentation with a colleague of mine. We would, within Fujitsu, we'd also use Microsoft Teams to collaborate with external parties. So it's not just once you have Microsoft Teams, only your staff members could use it. You could actually connect to external parties with the tool. And one reason for using the product, I think, that is very useful for today in particular is to host ideation sessions. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So I've given you some reasons why to use Microsoft Teams, but I really want to talk about how Fujitsu's experience was during this whole COVID pandemic and how Fujitsu experienced it and our staff. For example, a lot of parents would have said with the ability to schedule meetings on your calendar, and I'll show you this soon in a demo, they were able to kind of take control of their time. So they weren't in ad hoc meetings, they were in scheduled meetings, which allowed them to work with their children, to homeschool, and to also have a decent work-life balance. They also mentioned that there's the ability to virtually hide your background. So all the toys and the mess in the background, they were able to hide that so that their colleagues wouldn't see, the chaos of day-to-day life going on in the background. And another thing is that no one was unreachable. Everyone stayed connected. It was almost as if you were right there next to your colleagues. So you were able to work on documents together. You were able to call, chat at any time. And for external parties, we found that the use of Microsoft Teams is also quite seamless. So these were just some of our personal experience within Fujitsu Caribbean. What do you need to use Microsoft Teams? Really and truly, if you have the lowest internet package, you could still have group video calling. So you don't need very high bandwidth to use Microsoft Teams. The lowest internet package that you could buy would facilitate group calling and everything below that. So from this point on, I want to actually walk through a demo of Microsoft Teams and how it could facilitate sharing and collaborating. Good. So let's go to what Microsoft Teams actually looks like. There's Teams for web and there's Teams for your device. So you could have Microsoft Teams installed on your PC as such, or you could use Microsoft Teams within the web. You could install it on your phone or your tablet. Within Microsoft Teams, if I want to chat with a colleague, I could simply go to the chat bar and I'd see that my colleague Vijay is now online. So I'm just going to send him a little hello. Hi, Vijay. All right, so you'd notice that I could also send emoticons, which I love to do personally. And he would said, "Oh, thank you, Vijay." Apart from the chat, I could actually send a file directly to him. So, oh, he gave me a thumbs up. Thank you. So let's say I share a file with Vijay and I open that document. I'm going to show you now the ability to co-author documents within Microsoft Teams. Now, some of you may be familiar with this feature within Microsoft SharePoint. It is also available within Microsoft Teams. So let's open the document. All right. And as I type, hello. So as I type on the screen, Vijay would see he would see me typing on the screen. And I would also see him. Oh, we look like we have a little internet buffer there. Test, test. Yes, so we're able to collaborate in real time using Microsoft Teams. So you'd notice that where he is editing will have the blue dots next to it. So you'll see his name coming up there. So I'm going to go back into my team. So in real time, we're able to collaborate and I could actually see where he is editing a document. Additional to the ability to co-author a document, we could also integrate Microsoft Teams with a bunch of applications. So for example, if you're already familiar with OneDrive, Dropbox, Box, if you're familiar with Slack for the programmers amongst us, you could actually add those applications. So I'll actually show you a list of applications that you can add to Microsoft Teams. And it's basically thousands of them. I could keep scrolling and scrolling. You could connect it to Google Analytics and Microsoft Power BI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an example of how we can integrate Microsoft Teams with software that we already have. So let's say, for example, we are working on a project that is connected to a live report that is refreshed daily. You would notice that I could connect that Power BI report directly within my Microsoft team. All right, so you'll see that the report is loading. And you'll notice that I could filter on this report and read this from this report within Microsoft Teams and without having to go into Power BI or to go to where the report is embedded. So earlier I mentioned that I could schedule meetings. So for example, let's say this is my current calendar. If I want to schedule a new meeting, so I'm going to schedule a new meeting. So this is one of the key elements that were highlighted by some of our Fujitsu parents. So I'm going to say test demo, and I'm going to add Vijay. And I kind of want to see what his availability is like, because I don't want to schedule a meeting without knowing his availability. So let me see. So he's not busy right now, but I am busy right now. So I'm going to just switch the time to another date. Let's say the 28th, and you'll see that both our time slots are free. So with Microsoft Teams, we're able to schedule meetings without causing any conflict. We're able to integrate Microsoft Teams with tools like Power BI or even Microsoft Forms and over 1,000 applications that you may already have subscriptions to. Thank you very much. I now invite Ansel to continue with the presentation. Thanks everyone and have a good day.
Thank you for the introduction, Chanel. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ansel, and I'm here today to discuss how Microsoft Azure can assist you. As my colleague mentioned, we are in the world's largest work-from-home experiment stemming from the global coronavirus pandemic. A lot of companies were forced to adopt impromptu business solutions to enable the remote workforce. What we are now experiencing is a lack of our resources to quickly adapt to the sudden change in our demands. Companies are looking towards a cloud approach to fulfill these requirements with a goal of utilizing one of its most exceptional benefits, the cloud's scalability and flexibility. Businesses and organizations all over the world recognize Microsoft Azure as the most trusted cloud for enterprise and hybrid infrastructure. Now, Azure is at a global scale. With its Microsoft Global Enterprise Network backbone, it's the second largest in the world, superseded only by the Internet itself. With over 60 global regions and available in over 140 countries, the platform is easily accessible from anywhere at any time. With direct connections up to 100 gigabit per second per link being available, it's quite comparably one of the faster platforms. While adopting a modernized platform, businesses do need to maintain security and compliances to meet national and industry-specific requirements, such as PCI for credit card transactions and ISO standards for legal controls. Azure not only ensures its platform meets those requirements, but it provides you with multiple tools to ensure your workloads have advanced threat protection and you can standardize your deployments across your environment. Get into the Azure Cloud Platform. So your organization can gain competitive advantages from cloud computing, such as high efficiency, greater flexibility, lower costs, and a better performance for your applications and services. Because cloud computing represents a shift from the traditional way of thinking about your IT resources, a transition to the cloud requires careful planning and strategy. Now, determining when to migrate is a business decision, but there has never been a more ideal time to consider migration to the cloud. There is no one right fit or one right way to move to the cloud. Azure brings to you the best of both worlds. You can utilize a fully public platform or create a fully private cloud using Azure Stack. In most cases, organizations prefer a hybrid approach to connect your existing on-premise resources to the public cloud to capitalize on the advantages that can bring to you. With, with Fujitsu's 30 years of expertise in delivering managed IT services, we have uniquely positioned ourselves as an Azure Tier 1 cloud solution provider within the region, and we are proud to say that we are one of only 32 globally recognized Azure expert managed service providers. What this means is we can work directly with you and continuously work with Microsoft to manage the end-to-end lifecycle of all your cloud initiatives. We can guide you through the cloud adoption from day 0 to day 2 by helping you evaluate your costs and your needs to determine whether it's right for your organization and how best we can help you optimize your workload to be migrated to Azure Cloud. Fujitsu as your chosen provider will help you to ensure there's a smooth transition by formulating a migration strategy customized to your organization needs. Just to give you a bit of an example here, large organizations are now saving roughly 30% yearly on infrastructure costs just by moving to Azure. They have gotten the ability to scale upwards and downwards to meet their demands and the freedom to work on a pay-as-you-go consumption model. So now that you are changing platforms, this does not mean you do not have the organization functions of every day. Now we will now look at two useful Azure-based applications. So everywhere from home office to small businesses, and definitely at your large-scale enterprises, everyone has a file share service in place. But this brings to you many pain points. Capacity management. How do you know how to allocate resources efficiently? Your storage continues to grow, and a lot of it is just archived data that users or applications do not need on a day-to-day basis. Do you provision the servers upfront, or do you add storage as the file saver runs out of space? Then you're faced with the decision on how do you back up this data. If your organization has one central location or multiple locations, this brings to you a lot of considerations. This is where Azure File and File Sync comes into place. It provides a seamless, secure, and simple interface to manage all your file shares. It allows you to extend your on-premise environment to the cloud by one connection to a secondary copy and accessible from anywhere using uh, both an API or a login from a web interface. So yes, you can access from anywhere, but we want to look at the security. Azure ensures that your data is always secure on-premise and in transit using industry-specific standards. Azure Files is driving your company's collaboration by making data accessible anywhere at any time from any platform. It can be mounted concurrently by cloud or on-premise deployments over Windows, macOS, and Linux platforms, and it allows caching and synchronization of your Azure file share on any local Windows server. Now let's look at a second native application. In a modern workplace, everyone is connected through applications, devices, and in the cloud. Each of these generates data, and as that data grows, it drives your decisions and your business direction. Now the workplace has transformed. We are working remotely. We are work from home, but that does not deter the need for data protection. Your business continues to require a solution to avoid human error, to reduce any cost of downtime, for any system failure, to ensure uptime of your business and your brand reputation, and in likelihood of any man-made or natural disaster. Azure understands this and brings to you a modern approach where it will give you all the functions and features of an existing backup solution, but provide you with a secure, robust, and centralized infrastructure. Azure Backup is not by itself is not a comprehensive strategy for BCDR. While we would like to back up our data in the event of any data loss or face any issue, we'll also like to look at the Azure Site Recovery Service, which can help you uh, move from a cloud-to-cloud solution or on-premise to cloud uh, data center. So these are just some of the ways that Azure platform is bringing to you a modernized interface to help you understand and adjust to a modern work from home environment. I'll now hand you over to my colleague Andrew Dixon to hear how we can ensure your company's assets are protected.
Thanks, Ansel. After seeing how productive we can be while working remotely with teams, and also some important features available in Azure, you may all be ready to get some trials going. But before you do, it is important that we remind ourselves of some things we can do to make the experience secure. The threat landscape has changed. Gone are the days we could work securely by just being in the office behind a firewall. Bad actors are increasingly finding new ways to compromise our devices, applications, online services, and our people. Now, especially as we participate in the world's largest work from home experiment, we have to ensure that privacy and integrity of sensitive information is ensured through multi-factor authentication, endpoint system compliance scanning, and encryption of all transmitted data. Failure to do so will result in key business impacts. such as financial impact, damage to your company's reputation, reducing its brand value, losing customer trust, regulatory fines, and even going out of business. Just in case you think these things only happen on the international scene, the Caribbean is not immune to these impacts, as we have seen in recent times from these headlines across the region. And I'm bringing up the headlines now. The deck seems to be having a mind of its own today. Here we go. And those were snapshots of some headlines that we got from recent attacks across the region. Scary, scary stuff. So what can we do to protect ourselves? We could start by protecting the device we are using. Our mobiles, tablets, desktops, and laptops need to have some level of protection installed. Mobiles are actually a challenge, as we found that traditional antivirus apps find it difficult to protect them from other malicious apps, network attacks, OS exploits, because on a mobile, all apps run in a container and have no visibility to the activities of their neighbor. And I see okay, right. For laptops and desktops, we shouldn't get complacent with just regular antivirus solutions, as they normally rely on a pattern being known, which means for it to be effective, somebody has to be patient zero. We therefore need to have advanced threat protection for anomaly detection, such as change in pattern for user behavior, and utilize sandbox solutions for handling zero-day threats. Let's see if we can. After we take steps to protect our devices, we now need to protect our greatest assets, our people. With an exponential increase in phishing attacks since this pandemic, it is even more important to do simple things such as keeping current on the latest phishing hoaxes in circulation. Example, today we are seeing promises of get your COVID-19 updates here with malformed links that trick you into providing usernames and passwords. On the topic of passwords, we need to change passwords regularly, using hard to guess phrases and using a password manager app so that we don't have to write them down anywhere. And don't rely only on passwords, but whenever the option exists, use some form of multi-factor authentication via SMS, a mobile app, or even biometric. We need to adopt a zero trust approach for our network connection by practicing safe VPN to our office resources. This means always use a VPN to encrypt traffic, especially when working from unsecured networks. These networks, for the majority of us, are home internet without any next generation firewall capability or public Wi-Fi shared with unknown users. With the ability to VPN, you now have the responsibility of protecting your company's intellectual property by not making our connection become a vehicle for malicious actors. This means you should only make full VPN connections from company workstations, as these computers have client-based VPN, which can make An IPsec tunnel back to the office, providing an in-office experience while still providing the ability to enforce the necessary compliance requirements for accessing company data. In the case where we don't have access to our company workstation, but we still need remote access, we should explore clientless solutions, as this will restrict your VPN session to a browser and limit access to specific applications only and not the entire corporate network. Some of us have VPN capabilities in place already. However, most corporate firewalls were sized for a scenario where the majority of users were in office with the occasional travelers making remote connections. With the onset of COVID-19, the script has now flipped, forcing us to explore options to increase our remote VPN capacity. To maintain our staff count, the only real options, therefore, are either to upgrade our existing firewalls, which could consist of buying bigger appliances and ordering additional licenses, or we could consider a temporary solution such as a VPN concentrator hosted in Azure. This cloud-based firewall is flexible as it can scale to the number of users and easily be managed using the same tools and expertise as used on the existing on-prem equivalents. Should you choose to keep it, this model then ultimately positions you for securing the workloads that you may eventually move to Azure, or it could result in your adopting the VPN concentrator model as a permanent solution, which will allow you to enjoy some savings by downsizing some of your on-prem firewalls. Hopefully, I provided you with some useful tips for protecting you as we continue to work remotely. And if there's anything we discussed that you're not clear on, feel free to reach out to the team and we'll be happy to assist. And I'll go to Sandy for our questions and answers.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I will check now to see if we have any questions at this time. Just a reminder, you can submit your questions now. At this time, we don't have any questions, but we'll allow you some time. Remember, you can submit your questions using the questions tab in GoToWebinar. We're still not seeing any questions.
Just a reminder, this session will be recorded and sent out to the team. So.
Okay, so we don't have any questions, but just a reminder that the session is recorded and all attendees will receive the slides and a copy of the recording within 72 hours of the webinar when it concludes. So at that time, you still have the opportunity to get in touch with us to ask any questions that you have, whether related to the content delivered during today's webinar or any related questions in terms of how Fujitsu can enable your digital workplace.
So we do have a question. I think this is for Andrew. It says, what are some examples of password stored apps can be used or recommended?
So the password apps are really a personal preference on the App Store, depending on your mobile platform, whether it's the iTunes Store or the Play Store. I think I grew up with LastPass. LastPass is nice because it works on multiple platforms. Since then, however, I found that Apple has a, a popular product that works only on the Apple, unfortunately, which is Keeper. I personally like that one because it encrypts your passwords on the cloud and it also backs it up in case you lose your app or lose your password for whatever reason. So there are many apps out there. It just takes some investigation and trials to decide on your app of choice. The important thing is that you use the app. And with the app, the app will generate a suggested password and you don't need to remember it. It's just accessible whenever you do need to use it. Hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Andrew. Crystal, do we have any more questions?
Yes, I see another one here. It says, can you go into some more detail on the Azure VPN concentrator? What is required on site? Answer?
Actually, that's my
Okay.
question. So the Azure VPN concentrator is a cloud-based firewall. That's essentially what it is. So it is bringing up an instance of whatever. Well, at first we'll try to bring up your firewall that you have in a virtual equivalent in the Azure environment. If let's say your firewall is one that don't have a virtual equivalent, then we will propose a virtual firewall and then make secure tunnels back to your existing firewalls to facilitate your remote users connecting in.
Okay, thank
Not
you.
sure if that is any clearer. If not, you can let us know and I will expand further.
Thanks, Andrew. Another question is any best practice consideration for introducing Microsoft Teams in your organization?
Hi, thank you for the question. So for Microsoft Teams, what you want to start off with is understanding your organization. A lot of the times persons would activate Microsoft Teams without planning out how they want to use it. So we tend to try to replicate Microsoft Teams to match the structure of the organization so that we don't have too many ad hoc teams. So basically what you want to do is understand your organizational structure, understand how your projects are managed, and based on that, then you could start creating your Microsoft team structure. Also, another thing that you might want to take into consideration is the permissions that you would want to give to your staff and your team members. So for example, there's the option to um, allow external parties to join internal team meetings. That's something that you might want to consider. There's the option for external parties to remote control, to give external parties the ability to remote control screens for internal meetings. That's also something that you might want to discuss, and that's something I think that some persons would turn on in the event of if you have an external IT support department that is external to your organization. There are also considerations for would you allow recording of Microsoft meetings? So it depends on one, your organizational structure, and two, your governance structure that you would want to best practices to come up with a governance plan that will help you manage your Microsoft Teams to ensure that internal information does not get out of the organization. So those are two things to consider for best practices when implementing Microsoft Teams.
Thank you, Chanel. Crystal, do we have any more questions?
I don't see any other questions at this time. Hold on a second. A question is coming in. All right. What considerations should my company have in using Azure for BCP and DR? I'm a bit confused as to how we can put it together. So that question says, what considerations should my company have in using Azure for BCP and DR? I'm a bit confused as to how we can put it together.
Ansel, that question would be
Sure.
for you.
Yes. Thank you for the question. So with Azure Backup and Disaster Recovery, there are a number of considerations for your internal environment. However, the solution can work as a hybrid approach. It can back up your internal and your cloud workloads. That can be Windows, Linux, Mac OS clients, Windows clients, as such. You can have you can maintain a local storage, or you can have a secondary Azure copy as well. The products work hand in hand, such there's only one agent to install on the server or at a hypervisor level. Can provide you multiple ways of having a backup of your workload. I really hope that answers your question there.
Thank you, Ansel. We have another question. Why come to Fujitsu for Azure and not just do it myself?
That's actually a great question. So, Azure has its documentation generally available for you. Right? You can go to the site, you can get best practice information, you can get general information, but they will not specifically give you support for any deployment or implementation. What you would do to date, there is only two ways to get a subscription on Azure. You can either use a company credit card, where you can sign up, you can utilize resources, and you'll be charged to that company credit card. Or you can come to a partner, Fujitsu as one, where we will provide you with a subscription where you can utilize services. We can help you with the implementation and guide you through that process, as well as help you optimize your cost management and provide you with a summarized billing at the end of the month for any resources utilized. Right? Any other questions?
I am not seeing any other questions at this time. Sandy?
Okay, we have some time left, so we'll just give another minute or two for any questions. Also, if you believe your question was not answered fully, please get in touch with us. And you also still have the opportunity while we're on this webinar to ask or seek further clarification on your questions.
All right, so we have another one here. I joined the webinar a little late. What are the different storage options with Azure?
Sure. So if you're looking to migrate to the Azure cloud platform, you have numerous storage options. It's based on the workload that you will want to migrate. If it's an infrastructure as a service, if you're on a hosted VM, you do have blob storage, containers, as such. It's adjustable to suit your workload. If you're looking at a database, you can migrate your database and have it as a platform as a service, a PaaS solution, or you can also host it on Azure SQL. You can have the Azure Data Warehouse, Synapse. There are multiple considerations there based, and that's where Fujitsu actually guides you to choosing the best storage options for you based on cost and performance.
Oh, at this time, any more questions, Crystal?
I'm checking to see if we have any more. Oh, the person wanted to know if there was a slide that we could put up to help answer the question.
That's for the storage.
They didn't say which question it was.
Yeah, so in which case, probably an email to the team with exactly what information is that we're looking for, and we'll be able to set up a call and even have a more in-depth discussion around it.
And we'll also remind you that you will receive those slides and a recording, and in that time you can engage further with us if you have additional questions or needs that we can address that are unique to your environment.
So he says, yes, it relates to storage.
So what we will do for that question is we will schedule some time with you. Thank you for your question, and I think it requires that we have further dialogue so that we can go through the storage options available to you.
All right, so we have another question. It says, there are various types of cloud solutions available, such as AWS, VMware. Why choose Azure?
Thank you for the question. So Azure is quite comparably the largest cloud platform um, compared to AWS and VMware. Its global presence is next to none to date. Its backbone puts it at one of the fastest and cheapest solutions and cloud platforms. You can get storage at 0.002 cents per gig, and by default that's locally redundant, which means there's 3 copies of your data there. There's to date no one that can provide that. That's just some of the ways why Azure is comparably better. Um, what you can do, you can reach out to us and we can give you a review based on what you want to migrate to a cloud platform. We can tell you the better provider for you.
Okay. Thanks, Ansel.
Are we seeing any more questions at this time, Crystal?
No more questions at this time, Sandy.
Okay, so as I said earlier at the start of the webinar, we will still continue to respond to your questions. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. But at this time, we're going to reward our early bird registrants. So we're now going to announce the winners. If you are still in the webinar, please raise your hand. You will see a hand symbol on your screen that you can use to indicate that you are present. So we decided to reward the first 10 registrations. So the first winner is Kirk Henry. If you are in the webinar, please raise your hand. Okay, it doesn't look like Mr. Henry is in the webinar at this time. The next winner, David Fields. Stephen Habiraj.
Yes,
Just
Stephen here.
Stephen.
Yes.
Okay, congrats, Stephen. Thank you for your attendance. And of course, we know you have choice, so thank you for registering early. We will be in touch with you after the webinar. Justin John. Tremaine Bailey. Ganesh Maraj. Orju Gooden. Eldin Reynolds. Errol dos Santos. Janelle Cox. Nazir Aladdin.
Janelle is here.
Congrats, Janelle.
Nazir is here as well.
Nazir, congrats, Nazir. Okay, so some persons would have lost out because we did put one condition that you had to be in the webinar at the time that we announced the winners. So we'll go to Tracy Hatshaw. Keisha Premdas.
Keisha is on.
Congrats, Keisha. Thank you for being an early bird. Mervyn Hudson. Sherry Ann Caesar.
Sharianne is on.
Congrats, Sharianne. Leon Brewster. And Desmond Durham. Sachin Ganpat. Okay, we have 3 minutes to go. So I think at this time, what we will do, we will congratulate all the winners. Thank you for your participation. We are delighted that you registered early and stayed through to the end of the webinar. So at this time, we have 3 minutes in the official 1 hour allotted outside of the question segment. Well, we will give a minute or two to see if we have any more questions. Okay, as we said earlier, this session is recorded and all attendees will receive a copy of the slides as well as the recording. So we have now come to the end of today's webinar. Thank you very much for your time and attendance, and we look forward to connecting with you in the near future. Thank you and have a good day. Please stay safe.